Good morning. This is Carl Dakin, and this is my Successful Funding Show. Welcome to all of you in the audience today who have joined us to talk about funding. For those of you who are not familiar with this show, we started it several months ago to talk about anything involving funding, but most of our discussions have been on the topic of small businesses and communities, different aspects about how, why, who funds what for whatever reason. And today we'll be joined by Ron Yeager, a longtime friend and associate of mine who has worn many hats over the years and is in a very interesting position to evaluate and see why certain investors will look at certain deals and why they won't look at other deals. And so he'll be joining us here in a little bit. And in the meantime, if this looks like a refreshed face, I just got back from vacation at 2 o'clock this morning. Very much a fun diversion away from the usual suspects. And we've got a lot of things going on this week. In addition to this show, which I produce on Tuesday mornings at 8 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time, I will be starting on Thursday working with RCI Community Funds on a weekly program that will be on the topic of community revitalization. So for those of you who have an interest in working with communities, with all the multitude of different types of funding that are needed to help a community turn around and get a new economic boost in life, please join us in 2 days for the inaugural session of that particular program. So with that, then hopefully Ron will join us here in a little bit, and we'll get moving forward with that. Um, uh, Over the last several weeks, I've been publishing through my daily newsletter and my weekly newsletter a series of editions on different things dealing with how you go about crafting an offer to an investor. And for those of you who may have missed some of these different editions, they're all available online on LinkedIn, so you can go back. And for those who cannot spare the time to read it on a daily basis, what I've done with my weekly newsletter is I do a compilation of everything that is there throughout the week. So with that, I see that Don Cohen has joined us this morning. Good morning, Don. Thanks for being here this morning. Ron has told me that he is on his way, and I'm awaiting his sign in into the show so that we can get going with that portion of today's show. Don is my advisor, mentor, guru on everything dealing with LinkedIn. I started working with Don in September of last year, learning about how I can use LinkedIn as a primary social media platform to share my knowledge on funding and to build a community of people who work with me and with the small businesses communities that I support by providing them with information, knowledge, skills, tools, and other things to help those businesses move forward. And so I am continuing to invite people who work with small businesses and communities to raise funding to let me know. Reach out to me by through LinkedIn with a message or send me an email. And I'll be happy to chat with you. And we're always looking for new guests to share their insight and experiences on doing different things with all that. So Um, and Ron is apparently in the wrong place, so we're going to invite him again to join us and work our way through this particular um, situation. So let's see if that will help get Ron on board here. Um, Not seeing. Well, we'll see if he can catch up with us here. Um, Sometimes we use this when we do this program. We use a studio, which is software talk where there's Ron. And good morning, Ron.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Um,
Good.
I'm glad that I got you the right link, maybe, so you can be in the right place. Looking forward to talking this morning. I was just sharing with the audience that I got back from my vacation at 2 o'clock this morning. I'm getting very used to coming back into Denver International Airport after they shut down half of the trains and half they shut down services, and and still managed to make it home despite all that. I was announcing that we'll be starting a second show this week in 2 days for our
Mhm.
community funds, which will start a long series of discussions about how do you work with communities that basically have been left behind, that have been ignored, that somehow never hit the government lottery for funding. Or something in their karma went wrong, and the jobs that used to be there have disappeared and need to be replaced. And so we'll be talking about all that. But this morning, I invited Ron back again. We had a very good discussion a few weeks ago, and had a lot of positive comments about the fact that we're trying to get into the mindset of a investor. And it's a common problem that unfortunately, too much of what people think they know about raising funding is 100% wrong. And, and being 100% wrong, it leaves them in a position where they quite regularly go out and make a pick that has no chance of ever getting funding, partly because they are talking to the wrong people who will never, ever write them a check. They may not even applaud them on the sidelines from the stands. But the more important question is there's no money. And part of it is because these businesses are not prepared to receive capital. That happens a few times. But most everything you see in the press, on TV, in the magazines, anything dealing with entrepreneurship and raising capital assumes that a small business is going to raise all their money from an angel investor or a bank, and that those two are the only sources of capital that are available. And as a result, they're not. And so a lot of businesses go wanting for needed funding. Most businesses actually either are too risky to meet current bank standards, which is a zero risk tolerance standard set by the feds, or they don't make enough profits to be something that would qualify for a good wealth building investment for an investor who wants to use their money to make more money going forward is their primary goal. So the good news is that still leaves dozens of other types of funding out there of different shapes, sizes, and forms from all kinds of different funding sources, which still can get the deal done. And and so as we get into the mindset of an investor, the first thing we're going to talk about is that there's all kinds of investors. So Ron, uh, why don't you share a little bit again about your background, about how you got to be this guru on investing and small business and all that, and then let's just jump into, you know, who are investors, what are investment sources, why do they make investments, and we'll work our way through this morning.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you, Carl. And good morning to everybody, or good afternoon whenever you watch this. Yeah, my background, my initial big uh, effort was with United Parcel Service. I joined them a long time ago, spent 17 years there, moved up in the company, became one of their top operational performers. And then I left on good terms and to become an entrepreneur. And there's a lot of reasons for that. At UPS, I feel like I was an entrepreneur. I was always on, later in my career, I was on projects that that the whole world experiences now every day. So I left on good terms, and then moved on, started my first company, technology company, with a partner of mine. We sold it 2.5 years later. We hosted computer systems for Fortune 2000 companies. We were an MSP, managed services provider, and then moved on to several other different endeavors. And a few didn't do well. Several did pretty well. Some I've exited. And currently, I'm the co-founder and CEO of a software tool company. The company's name is Provada, and we invented a process, if you will, or a tool called Code True, where we believe we can find every fault in every line of source code. So along the way, I've met a lot of people. And as you were talking in the opening here, Carl, I thought everything that's been invented in the past has already been out there. Like, you have chocolate, you have peanut butter. It was like apart forever. But then they found each other and they invented this Reese's peanut butter cup. I don't get paid by them, by the way. But there are things out there for an entrepreneur to look at. They're there. It's just you have to be in the right environment. You have to match up really well. And then that investment will be invented. And it's just simply that easy, Carl.
Yeah, right. It's simply that easy. So um, it's a good point. I think we're in what you call an opportunity-rich environment. There are so many new ways to create products and services that can help other people, and these benefits are great enough that people will actually buy the products and services, which supports the formation of a business, but they may not be that appealing to investors for so many different reasons. And that gets us into the mindset of the investor themselves. I will admit that it took me a long time in my career before I realized that people who can write a check are not necessarily the brightest bulb in the drawer, and that they had often little or no training in investing, which, when paired with a small business that had little or no training in raising money, typically makes for, I will call it, a bad mix. It just doesn't happen that well. You'll have miscommunications, you will have misunderstandings, you will not get the investor doesn't get excited either because they didn't understand what was being said or they weren't being given enough information to become excited. and it's in this I would call a crossover area where you and I both have worked for a long time,
Hmm.
trying to act in some ways as interpreters and translators, trying to bridge the gap between what an investor thinks they need to see in order to invest, what they want to see, and what the business thinks that it's trying to tell, which too often is the wrong story to the wrong person. With us here as we get started, Harvey Chuck is with us this morning. Good morning, Harvey. It's great to see you. Harvey is a member of a group that I am a member of under the tutelage of Don Cohen. And um, Harvey does the franchise show, and then he has a second show which also has to do with franchising, but he shifts kind of hats, and everybody recognizes Harvey because he wears this hat all the time in his shows, and he's building a huge audience, a huge following as he's bringing the experts, all the experts in the franchise industry to talk about all the different challenges from regulations to funding to mechanics of operation. And it's a really great show.
Hmm.
And he will be on later today with his show. Those of you want to tune in to Harvey on LinkedIn can do that. And then Don is here saying hello again to Ron. Don puts on a show Monday through Thursday at 9 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time, 11 o'clock Eastern. So as soon as you get off of this show, then you can jump over to um, um, see Don's show, and then after that, you can jump over to see Harvey's show, and you can have your day filled full of information from all these different sources. Um, Ron, when you start thinking about investors, how do you basically group them, classify them, put them in different buckets? What are you thinking about?
Well, here's what I'm thinking about. The investor group that I know and that most people that that would use, it's not a static pool of people. It's always fluid, it's amorphous. And so in other words, I know a lot of people that would like to invest and some that don't like to invest, but they're intrigued. So the fluidity is that I stay in contact with them at their leisure and at their cadence. And so I've stayed in contact with certain investors, individuals, and small private equity groups, for instance, that I've stayed in contact with them for 3, 4 years before something arose that said, "Oh, this is a perfect match." So it, it's not like you go to an old library and check out a book. It's not like that, but it's a dynamic two-way mutual relationship. And where I'm at, because I've built a track record of startups, and some that did well, some that we exited, a couple that failed. Those investors, it depends on whether they're suffering from investor fatigue or what have you, but they like to know what I'm doing and maybe what my team of people are doing at whatever company we're at or what we're starting up. So it's not like a regular newsletter I will send out or anything like that, but I do allow investors to subscribe informally. So if they say stay in touch, let me know what you're doing, let me know if you're looking at something new. That's how we stay in touch. Now, to build that, it took a few, initial people and this happened a long time ago when I left United Parcel Service. Shortly thereafter, I needed to raise some money for a company called Prentice Technologies and some other things too, and a folded pack company, a packaging company. And so I went back to the people I had worked with or people that were my professional social uh, uh, partners and people. And so that's where I initially drew from. And some are cold turkey. And I don't know if I said this on the last show, but since 2018, 90% of what I'm doing right now, I didn't know these entities or these people prior to 2018, 2020. So I'm still using the same methodology, if you will. I don't think of it like that, but that's a word that may resonate with the audience. But I do cultivate, curate people, and in a good way. I don't want it to be a one-way street. It's got to be a two-way street. It's got to be mutually rewarding. And so that's the snapshot of where I'm at right now. And, I'm in the midst of a couple things that I'm definitely involved with. There are two other things that I'm been invited to be involved with. And so now I'm working that out, and they are bringing the investors. So then I ask myself, well, what is it truly, that I could bring to the table? And if it's sincere, yeah, we'll keep talking about this. We'll move forward on those conversations. So,
Yeah, so the 2 points that you make there that I think are very important. I tell people that the 3 keys to raising funding is first is having a relationship with the investor. And those relationships, you kind of want to, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, a lifelong entrepreneur, you want to keep building the relationships, and it's an ongoing process because
yes.
you're never quite sure when you're going to get that match with your current project. It may be they loved your last project, they hate your next one. Hate may be too strong, but they're not writing checks, so we move them into category B. Um, and it's very important that they know you, trust you, they have some understanding of who you are. And the thing is if you have this long-standing relationship with an investor, then you're going to get preference over other people they don't know. And this is yet a third point, that you're always competing for money. Sometimes it feels like the Olympics. We're going to use that term freely in today's show, where you're sitting there going, "Wow, I did everything right," but at the top of that last turn, I missed my point, my stop, whatever, and I fell to the mat, and all my work was wasted. And you feel like that quite often as an entrepreneur, where you're going, wow, I thought I did everything right, and I did up to the point, but I still didn't get the gold medal. I didn't even make the podium. Actually, I didn't even make the team to go over to Paris. It's a series of things. And it isn't that you're not good. You're excellent. You're just not in the top level. And when you're competing with other businesses for funding, you often get the feeling that if you're not in the top 1, 2, or 3, you have no chance of getting any money whatsoever. So another point that you made is that investors are not static. They are not like a constant, beat of the heart, from day to day. They will change their mind, and they will change their mind in a hurry. And why their mindset is where they're at, we'll dive into a little bit more today. What changes the mindset, but they're not constant. So if you thought that they might invest in you a year ago because they knew you and they liked what you were doing, and they did, doesn't mean that they're going to be someone who's going to invest in you today. So back to relationships. Do you have enough relationships where you can find the investor you need at the time you need them? Or are you back into a search for new people you don't know and having to go through the work to build the relationships and all the things that go with that? There are just so many different issues in here. And I think that it's unfortunate that we tend to present investors as though they're geniuses. They have all the money in the world. They can fund anybody who shows up. They are not preferential. They'll fund anybody, anytime, anywhere. And this causes small businesses to not do their homework, not to understand who they're working with, not to respect the investor as a person and what their goals and so forth are. And they put out generic offers that are so generic they don't influence or attract anybody, and we have this high failure rate. And small businesses aren't expected to be experts in raising funding. That's not their thing. But they need to be aware enough that if they are going to raise funding, if they're going to do it themselves, um, that they need to know what needs to be done in
Mhm.
order to be successful. Otherwise, it becomes a large waste of time and money. It can be so large of a waste, it can kill a business. And in today's marketplace, it seems that all businesses are vulnerable because we have so many large dynamic things taking place. Um, Ron, when you talk to an investor and you're trying to size them up on their interest, how do you go about eliciting this determination without putting somebody in a corner, and up against the wall and going, "Are you going to give me an investment?" Uh, you know, uh, there's a little bit of etiquette that needs to take place.
Yes, there's etiquette, there's a nuance, and then I was thinking that, or I know that for me, what works is I stay in touch where that investor is in their life right now. For instance, there's a lot of investors, I mean, north of 10, 12 investors I've had in the past that are early baby boomers. So they're officially retired. They have their money. They don't want to play anymore because, it's been about 4 or 5 years and the kids moved on. Maybe they're downsizing. Maybe they're getting timeshares in different countries around the world. And that's their priority. They're not going to make a good investor anymore. So you need to understand where the person or the people are at. And that's the first thing. Then to approach them, um, well, even earlier than that, before you approach them, and maybe even before they become investors. I always, like when I was at Boulder Startup Week this summer, I did a lot of volunteer work and I offered services and coaching and mentoring and things like that. So when you offer things first, then it makes it easier than if you just show up. And this has happened to me so many times where a company and the people, the founders of the companies show up and they want to jump into a funding conversation and they don't even know if I own a dog. They don't know if I'm married. Am I single? They don't know anything. They just want to talk and jump right into it. So where I'm at right now, it's easier for me because I did all the work prior to the ask, and I know pretty much I have the pulse of where people are at and what people might work well together, and they can syndicate an investment deal. So that's it. You just have to have 80% of that knowledge, and then and then you close, the deal by re-engaging with them. And maybe it's the course of a conversation you have every 4 months, 3 months, 6 months, and then you revisit that conversation. And then under the topic of this is what's new and this is what I'm doing, you mention it. And then almost always, whoever I talk to like that, Carl, they say, "Are you looking for additional investors?" Not that I'm manipulative or make them think that it was their idea, but they do say that. Okay. And it's just because I'm truthful. I'm giving an accurate snapshot of where things are at, and maybe it's too early scale, too much risk. And I'll say that to them, I'll say it's too risky, maybe when we de-risk it. And for some people, they think that's a valuation play that, oh, okay, I see what you're doing, and you want my money to come in at a lower valuation. No, that's not the case. It just needs to come in at the right time. And for the investor, for the company, and for me and the others that make decisions about the company and what the next steps are and what the milestones are. And most importantly, above anything else, how to deal with exceptions. That's it. That's when you need investors there that really, I don't know what the cliche is. It's not that they have your back, but they trust you, and you can get out of that. That's a skill of an entrepreneur, by the way, because it's not easy at all. So,
Right. So this brings up several more points that there are different investors that will come in at the very, very, very early front end of something.
mhm,
There's not many of them.
yeah,
And we sometimes call them cowboys or wildcatters is a term they use in the oil and gas field, but they're used to high risk. They kind of enjoy high risk adventures. They've got money that they can afford to lose. And if the deal goes wrong and the business fails, you don't want them to be mad at you as the entrepreneur. So you want to make sure that they understand how risky it is. And as you point out, sometimes you'll have people come to you and go, "Hey, I'm interested in investing in your new venture." And you look at them and you think about their past track record and what they've done and their risk tolerance. And you have to tell them, quite frankly, I'm not playing you. I'm not manipulating you. I'm telling you right now, I think this is too risky for you. The entrepreneur has to take it upon themselves to evaluate and understand what kind of deals this investor will commonly invest in. And they may go, yeah, no, I've got 80% of my money in real estate and I've got two or three solid long-term plays. I've got some money I can be more risky with. And they can talk you in to letting you receive money.
yes,
But you really have to be sensitive to that. And a lot of times you'll see people making investments they shouldn't invest in, whether it's a cryptocurrency scam or it's some other really crazy type of venture, which may or may not be a real business. But you're like, how did that happen? How did this mismatch occur where grandma put all her money into a high risk deal, which one, she should never have been offered the deal. And two, where was her head at the time that she thought that this was something that she needed to do? Um, so we're working with investors who have different preferences, different risk tolerances, and that's in their head. They have their own experience in investing, which, if they don't know much and they haven't been trained in investing, is likely to be a little bit colored by bad decisions in the past. I've seen good investors become terrible candidates because they go, well, my last deal went bad. And I'm going, yeah, but these are independent risks. Your last deal and this deal have nothing to do with each other. And but they're just they're going, I gotta sit back, I gotta kind of adjust and think about this before I'm going to get into a new deal. And it's hard. And for those of you who are raising money for a startup business, I don't care what kind of business it is, it's brand new. And because it's brand new, it's high risk. Now, there's super high risk and there's high risk, but they're all high risk because this business is not operated before. The management team may or may not have worked together before. The market may have changed since something else occurred in this place. And as I mentioned with Harvey, Harvey works with coffee franchises. And I make the joke that two coffee companies on the same street, maybe across the street or opposite corners, if they're formed at different times, these are still unique businesses. They're both selling coffee, they're both selling pretty much to the same audience, the same customers, but they started at different times. So one may say, hey, I got a good lease on my building, the other one didn't. I may have a new type of free coffee from some place in a zone where they're doing programs to help the workers build wealth. And so they can have an advantage over the other coffee shop because how they source where they got their coffee. Or They're doing their own roasting. There's all kinds of things you hear when you walk into a coffee store, as I did yesterday morning in Olympia, Washington. And you're sitting there going, why is this coffee any different from any other coffee? And some people are connoisseurs of coffee. I like mine hot and black,
Hmm.
and pretty much don't care. So if somebody asked me about investing in a coffee shop, I'd go, no, probably not. But if a friend of mine asked me, who I knew for a long time, I would have to give it some consideration because they're a friend of mine. And so where I ordinarily wouldn't pay any attention, the fact that I have a relationship with somebody is going to get it that extra touch. So Harvey made a statement that I'm a star, and I'll have to say that as fatigued as I am from my vacation, I'm going to take all the accolades I can get this morning. And But Harvey and I are talking about the fact that it may be a good idea for a franchise to put together templates and programs and systems to help their franchisees raise money. And a lot of people don't think about it this way, but the franchise route is one way of raising capital indirectly. Instead of going out and raising the money for yourself, where you're going to create a monolithic company, you go, well, what I can do is I can share my knowledge with someone else. I can let them raise money. I don't have to raise money now because they can go to their network of people and their relationships and raise money. And actually, that would be easier for me to grow this and just collect a small royalty fee as a franchisor than to try to become this huge single entity type of thing. And there's lots of businesses like that where it's hard to become huge as a business, but you can have licensees, you can have dealers, you can have all kinds of people with a very repeatable model that can
Hmm.
still scale to the same overall sizes of sales, but you're running it differently, it's structured differently. And this allows a lot of people to go out and use their own personal network of people to raise money where they already have that relationship. And it's really hard to explain sometimes how important it is, as Ron described, to know the investor, to know where they're at, what they're doing, and whether they pair up, like a good wine with a meal. Is this a good match or is this a bad match?
Well, Carl, you said a couple things. You said, you're happy to receive the accolades in this period of lack of sleep. So perhaps when you wake up, you realize it was just a dream. I don't know. No, Carl's an expert in just about anything he talks about. But and with regard to the franchisees, franchisors, uh, my latest potential endeavor that arrived 2 weeks ago, it's a very successful business, and they're looking to franchise. And the good thing about this is they have a history of working for a major company uh, doing franchising. That's what they did. And so now they have their own company. They got away from it. Now they thought, wait a minute, this is a really good idea. I want to franchise this. And so we're having conversations about that. And I have worked with major corporations and smaller coffee shops in San Diego, California, and with regard to raising funding to secure a franchise, let's say, and that part of it. But there are several different parts to the franchise model. But that's interesting. I was thinking also, it's when you're an entrepreneur, you want to sell people on something, and then to get the investment. And a long time ago, I lived south of Denver. I started up a company and just talking to the neighbors and such. And then one day, the husband and wife came over on a Sunday afternoon with a personal check for $15,000 made out to my name. They said they wanted to be a part of my deal. We never even had that conversation. Okay. But so immediately I thought, am I really that good? Or are they just not that good at discerning and doing these things? I mean, they could be accredited investors, you know. I don't know if they're sophisticated, maybe in picking out the self-directed 401k at that point in their time in their life. But you know, that was just kind of a shock to me. And then I had to unwind that. I had to reverse engineer that. I had to say, what did I say to them or other people that have done similar things to me? What did I say that caused them to have a call to action and do something demonstrative like that, which was very nice. I was very humble about it. I said, you know, that's not how the funds are. I never had the conversation prior of how the company's funded. And I just said, that's not how the funding's coming in. I really appreciate it. You know, but we're taking minimum investments of 150,000, that type of thing. But they missed the mark, but it's all because of anecdotal stuff. I very seldom just talk nonstop about what I'm doing. As a matter of fact, I try not to talk about it, because the more I talk about it, people put me in a box. And I don't want to be in a box. That's because that's not the correct box. My box looks like the Denver Art Museum. It doesn't have any 45, 90-degree angles. It doesn't, no, it's just like if you've seen the Denver Art Museum. And I've actually went there last month, and it was very interesting on the inside. It was boxy and curvy, but normal for me is a setting on a washing machine. Okay. So that's it. That's my life. And it's fun. I've had a smile on my face for over a decade, but it's not that easy either, especially when you're curating, cultivating, and assessing potential investors. That's and it's kind of an art, but it's also, there's some science involved, and timing, and deal opportunity, and what the opportunity is. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a lot
so
there.
Harvey is intrigued. He wants to learn more about you, Ron. So I will take the opportunity after the show to do an introduction between you and Harvey. You'll enjoy him. He's in the UK, and um, his his coffee franchise is not on the scale of ones we might see here in the United States, but nonetheless, I like franchises for some small business owners who don't have the experience of running their own show. I like it for some people who come out of big business and they don't have the experience of running 100% of the show as an entrepreneur, where you have to be accountable for everything, everywhere, all the time.
Hmm.
And so a franchise, a well-designed franchise, will provide the knowledge, the tools, the supply chain systems, sometimes the back office software, you name it. It is a turnkey type of operation. And then the key distinction is the marketplace that the franchisee works with, and the capabilities of the person who's running the franchise. And in some cases, franchises are not the right match for a particular person or somebody who wants to be an entrepreneur or wants to be in charge of their own lifestyle. But in many cases, it gives them that head start. It gets them past a lot of the startup issues that really can basically kill a business before it gets started. So Harvey responds again with really enjoying this episode, and he called us gentlemen, which shows that Harvey doesn't know us at all. But we'll worry about that later. Um, so as we're talking with people, some people will come to me and they treat me, I will call it like a broker. Brokers are people who introduce businesses to investors. That's their job. And they make their money in the form of a commission for bringing the two groups together. And I've worked with a lot of brokers. There's places where they are the right answer to finding funding. And I've found in most cases, they're not the right answer to finding funding. for the businesses I work with. Uh, Brokers have to conform to all kinds of securities regulations. They have a license in order to give them permission to act as an intermediary, to be between the person who has the money and the business looking for the money. And as a consequence, they have a number of relationships. They have their own network of investors with whom they have worked with for a long time. And the good news is that if you bring them a deal that you need funding for, and they happen to have somebody in their group that is a match, then you can do a very quick deal. But statistically, they will not have someone in their group that's going to match with you, and you can talk to a series of brokers and still not get the funding that you're looking for. And these days, depending upon the size of money that you're trying to raise, you may not be large enough um,
To
to um, um, large enough to see um, in a broker get interested. They're saying, "Well, no, I'm part of a larger establishment. We've got a lot of cost. I've got to do all this regulatory compliance, and if you're too small, too risky, they will look at their own cadre of investors, their network of investors, and go, I don't have a match. And if they're really good, they'll tell you that quickly, and you can move on to looking for funding in a different source. But they are there, and occasionally I'll have people come to me. And I said, I think this deal is big enough, strong enough, far enough along, mature enough that I think you could go out and talk to some brokers and then you want to try to find somebody who can very efficiently pair you up with one or more of their investors in their network and move forward. Um, Unfortunately, most of the time, I will call somebody and like Ron does is, this case, because they're professional, I'm going to say, hey, I've got a project looking for money that looks like this. I'll give them the FBI profile of the investment opportunity, and they'll say, send me a one pager. Don't send me the entire, kitchen sink, but just give me enough to take a look at it. And they may float it around their network very quickly with a broadcast email and say, what do you think? And if somebody comes back to them and says, I'd like more information, then we can start going back and forth. But at that point, I step out of the middle because I'm not a broker, I'm not licensed. My goal is not to make the sales pitch on behalf of the small business. My goal is to help them get a sales pitch that is targeted to the right person who's most likely to make an investment, and to get everything ready to go. And I've got a number of projects right now where people are going, when are we going to get the funding? And I said, we don't have a business yet. And
right.
we don't have the opportunity defined, and we cannot explain what the outcome of an investment might look like. These are all kind of fundamental things to share with an investor candidate, because they need to make an evaluation, or they're going to go to an advisor or a friend or a lawyer or somebody. Not that lawyers and friends can't be the same, but yeah, I just drew that out. But the point being is they're going to get some additional look at this particular deal, and that means that when you're pitching to a particular investor group, you may have multiple decision makers. You may
Mhm.
have people that are going to contribute to the investment decision you never get to talk to. And so whatever you're doing in your relationship with the person you do know, whatever's in your pitch deck, your promotional set, it has to withstand a look by people that you never get a chance to talk to. You can't talk them around. You can't assume you're going to win them over because you never get to talk to them at all. And so for that reason, you may think that you can win the day because you're a good orator. You can talk to anybody anytime, but you don't get the chance. Um, and the general rule is that the investor candidate you're talking to has got that advisor out there, who's more conservative to keep them
Hmm.
from doing the wrong deal. And so, as much as you may appeal to the person you're talking to, when they go share it with someone else, the likelihood of getting investment goes way down.
True. It's like it's like a company. If you're big enough to hire a CFO, the CFO's primary job is to say no. No, we can't afford that. No, we're not going to buy that. No, we're not doing that. So yeah, it's you make a lot of good points. And by the way, you use the word cadre, and I use a similar word. I use cabal. So it's it's all the same. Um, but yeah, it's a so a lot of good points you made. It, it's a timing thing, um, and it's an educational thing, and it's a respect thing. You know, if someone in my how my situation evolved, my my entrepreneurial opportunities, things that are brought to me, um, my potential investments and co-investors and new investors, it just evolved to that point where I'm at. If I would have scripted this out 15, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, it wouldn't be right. Nothing would match. So that's why I'm using the word fluid again, but to remain relevant and fluid and what's happening, what's up, because right now there's a lot of new things that were on the horizon a few years ago, but now they're front and center, including AI. And there's many things. AI, that's appeared to be, when it became more ubiquitous, it appeared to be a threat to a software company that I have, where we're finding all vaults and all lines of code. It appeared to be a threat, but after looking at this and analyzing it and realizing it's AI, not AGI, so it doesn't think by itself as a human, but it's all derivative. Then we realized, my partner and talking to Carl and other associates and people I know and I trust, it makes it more exciting. It actually spans the market. So we didn't pivot, nothing like that. We included the AI piece as far as a future prospectus or for grants that we've submitted. And we added a piece to that, up to a page at times, to discuss that and the likely outcomes and probabilities and how that will help us. Again, not trying to spin it, we're trying to be very accurate. I mean, because if you look at through a prospectus or a deal pitch or anything like that, and if it's professionally done, they're going to give you many warnings to not invest, because you potentially could lose all your money and then some. So that's how I come at it, from any side of it, as an investor or as a person that's pitching for funds with a startup or an ongoing company, because you can't have any surprises for the investors. You definitely don't want to hide anything, and if you have the proper non-disclosures and such, you can disclose things. And even the timing of disclosing it is important. If you wait and sit on something, then disclose it, you lose credibility. And that's the bottom line. That's the number one currency, I think, that I have, that a lot of investors and entrepreneurs have, is the credibility. If some things don't match and some things don't make sense, or you wondered why this person took forever to respond to you with the response that they contained, then you start losing trust. And so credibility is really, really important. That's why I'm happy to spend an entire show talking about everything that went wrong. you know, so that could be an interesting show. So
Yeah, no, I've talked with Don Cohen, and on his show, a lot of times, conversation is on learning from your mistakes or learning from your failures. And I was on the show with Ford Sykes as a co-guest last week, and we were talking about how it's better to learn from other people's mistakes rather than making them all yourself. simply don't have the time, you don't have the resources to go through the, I'll call it the tuition of life.
Hmm.
And uh, but I think it's so important when you're talking to an investor to know, one, what is their background? How many times have they invested? What kind of deals do they invest in? What industries are they interested in? Which doesn't mean that the door is closed. If they're somebody who only invests in wind power, that doesn't mean that they might not look at a solar type of thing, because that might be common enough or close enough that they could take a look. Or they might look at a really new radical type of hydrogen technology or a hydrogen fuel cell or some such thing. You really never know.
Hmm.
But if you come at the investor with, you are an investor, you have money, you need to listen and hear my pitch, you almost invariably are going to get shut down, shut out before you even start, because you're showing disrespect for the
Right.
person. You're saying, you're basically an ATM machine and I expect you to give me money. I can't think of a way to turn off an investor any quicker. There's very, very few out there who like to think of themselves as the ultimate banker or source of funding, who wear their investment ego all over themselves, like a tattooed on their forehead. Um, Most investors out there are looking for something to have their money work. And some of them want the money to make enough more money that they can elevate their social status. Other ones want the money to work to maybe help social causes or impact investors.
Hmm.
And other ones basically are delegating all the decision to a fund manager or somebody else, and they don't feel comfortable making their own investment decisions, and so they give it to someone who's going to be quite frankly far more conservative, and won't look at hardly any of the deals that I work with for that reason. And there's nothing wrong with that. It just, that's what they want to work with, and within those limitations, we're not going to see an investment from this group.
Hmm. That's true. I mean, it's and the things that Carl is working on and has historically worked on. Um, it's not, I don't know what the phrase is, outside the box, but they're all new and unique, and some things have never been thought of before. And so then, your pool of investors for something like that is pretty narrow. But then again, I'm assuming, Carl, when you talk to potential investors and you lay out a possibility for a business or a community or what have you with new and innovative thought processes, I think that hooks a potential investor in much quicker, and they want more. And that's kind of what I see.
I, yeah, I think that it's an interesting thing in how you sell. A lot of people are trying to sell the product or service that the business is providing to consumers.
Yep.
But what I think is the greater hook is the management team and how they go about bringing that product or service to market, because there is a method, there is experience, there are, fallbacks and strategies and so forth. And to a lot of investors, this is the compelling part of the story. Yes, anybody can have a business. Yes, anybody can have a product or service, but your management team has a cool way of dealing with problems, or you're coming at the market from a different angle, which should open the market up and overcome a lot of the challenges that your competitors are facing. And by being able to describe your approach to making the business work, I think a lot of investors, this is part where they feel comfortable that this is a good deal, even though everybody acknowledges it's new. It's so new that it's difficult even to describe, and there's all kinds of risk associated with doing something that new. But if they think that you're thoughtful and considerate and you're looking through all the options and you're laying them out strategically, this will overcome a lot of the resistance that a lot of people would ordinarily have for doing something new. And
Mhm.
if it turns out it's still too risky, then they can go put their money in a business they can know and understand, which they themselves are already a consumer and buying products or services, maybe to their business or for their personal use. And they can invest in a coffee shop. They should go, talk to Harvey.
That's true. Well, very good. I've had my coffee for the day, but
Yes, and I know
yes,
you had a hard stop at 9
yes.
o'clock, so I'm gonna turn you loose, Ron, and I will close out the show. Thank you very much for being my guest, and you and I, of course, will talk later, and I'll get you an introduction to Harvey. So Ron,
Excellent.
thanks, again. Take care.
Okay, have a good day, everyone. Bye bye.
So, as I mentioned earlier, we've got a lot of things going on here. One, I have a newsletter I put out on funding, and we're covering all kinds of topics. And I appreciate anybody who will send me a problem or a question for me to talk about in the daily edition. I try to have at least one lesson there, and I also will share places where I may be talking or speaking as a guest or at a conference, again, with the intent to make more of my background and experience in raising funding available to people who are looking to raise money now. And then we're next going to do this. There we go, but not so quick. We're going to start a new show in 2 days. And this is for RCI Community Funds. This is a new project I'm a partner in. We're putting together the company, we're putting together the plan, we're putting together all the things we were just talking about, which is how do you help an underserved community, one which, for whatever reason, has fallen behind the pack, is not caught up, and seems to sometimes be trapped forever in an economic situation where there just aren't enough jobs, aren't enough businesses, things are not happening. This may be because the primary business in the industry in town shut down. It may be because of a change in the marketplace. But people in these communities sometimes need some serious help to get out of where they're at and into a new ecosystem without having to leave their homes or leave their communities. So I'm working with a group of guys, and we think we've come up with some better mousetraps to deal with this situation in the form of community investment funds. And not just money, but how that money is deployed to create synergistic, complementary economic activity and cause, in effect, like a catalyst, a reaction to the funding that will give the community a chance to start building, rebuilding itself, maybe even to become something it never was before, with a lot of local jobs, better paying jobs, which can allow people to own their own homes and build wealth and allow this community to grow and thrive. So the whole team will be on the call on Thursday. Look forward to introducing the team and everything that we're looking to do as we start to cookie cutter out a series of community investment funds. You're all invited to come back in a couple of days and see that. The link is there on my page, but you can also go to my profile on LinkedIn under events, and you'll see the one for RI Community Funds as an event that's scheduled for Thursday. So thanks to everyone who was in the audience today. Thanks for everyone's comments and for tuning in to see this show with my guest, Ron Yeager. We'll be back next Tuesday with more information on funding.